Every year I start by saying, Bridging the Gaps is a collaboration about multiple institutions and community sites, etc. And I thought last night, I just want to give you a sense of what goes into a program like this. So who is involved? And this list is very incomplete. There are over 100 community partners, community-based organizations, including their staff and their constituents. They're grant makers, public, private, corporate, individuals, and also our institutions. There's faculty, students, former students. They're community and academic preceptors who actually are mentors. They're people who come and present their expertise to the young people who are our future leaders. We have an advisory board. We have group leaders. We have leadership of our academic institutions and in all arenas, risk management, legal, business, administrative support. And I need to name by name the program directors at each of these schools because they do the day-to-day, in and out, year-to-year work on this program. And so let me just name them. Elisa Goldberg from Drexel, Tareem Burrows and Diane Butera from Temple, Denise Curran from PCOM, which is Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, forgive me, Maria Hervada Page from Jefferson, Ellen Martinack from Penn, and that's the Philadelphia cluster, Leah LaBranche in Lake Erie, Mary Ellen Miller and Abby Letcher in the Lehigh Valley, Thistle Elias in Pittsburgh, and they are celebrating their 20th year, and Bernadette West in New Jersey. These people are amazing in their commitment to our mission, and I just want to thank them. And I also want to thank particularly Ellen Martinack and Bridget McCormick for the day-to-day program office infrastructure that they provide this program, and I really want to give them a hand. So, I'm sure I left somebody out, and if you're one of them, you can meet me at the door at the end of the program, and I will put you on the list for next year. So now, I would like to turn it over to Tareem.
Hello all. Once again, my name is Tareem Burrows, and I am the Bridging the Gap Program Director at Temple University, as well as the Community Engagement Specialist for our Center for Bioethics, Urban Health and Policy at the Med School. So I have the pleasure of introducing the winner of the photo contest. All right. It was a rough go. Great photos for everyone, but there could only be one winner. And so the winner is number 2, East Park Revitalization Alliance. Give them a round of applause. Great job, everyone. Beautiful photos, and we'll be using most of them throughout the entire year. So thank you. And I would like to introduce Ellen Martin.
Hi, I'm Ellen Martinack. So I work for the overall Bridging the Gaps program as the Associate Director, and then, as Lucy said, I'm also the Program Director for the University of Pennsylvania, piece of it. And I'm here just to talk about the Heart Smart event that we have each year. So one of the many health-related activities Bridging the Gaps supports each summer is the promotion of cardiovascular health. And throughout the summer, students, when appropriate, engage people at their site in cardiovascular health-related activities and education. To celebrate the partnership between community cardiovascular-related health and Bridging the Gaps, the program hosts a Heart Smart event midway through the program. In preparation for the Heart Smart event, students are asked to work with each of their sites to develop a poster project that can be part of a contest highlighting the cardiovascular health. I know many of you have attended the Heart Smart event, have seen the walls filled with the creative posters representing cardiovascular health in the community. I've also done some dancing and some eating while you were there. And if you didn't already see them, they're in the hallway right outside the door. And I want to announce this year's winners, which will be offered a cash prize of $100 for winning. So this year, the 3 sites that won are See a Difference at Philadelphia Fight, To Our Children's Future with Health, and Youth Emergency Services. So I also want to give, next up is Erin, who will be representing the student coordinators, and I wanted to give a shout out just to all the student coordinators who, among other things, plan and coordinate the cardiovascular themed events at the Heart Smart reception and make it just a fun event for everybody who attends. So thanks.
Good morning. I'm Erin, as Ellen said, and I'm just introducing this year's kind of wrap-up video of the summer. Thanks to all the interns for sending in videos and pictures. Hopefully this kind of highlights the enthusiasm that drives this program.
So, we are often asked about the impact of bridging the gaps, and we thought that our impact could best be exemplified by someone who has lived it as a student, a preceptor, and perhaps most importantly, in her career. We're very proud today to have Marjorie DeJoie Brewer, a 1993 alumnus of the Bridging the Gaps Community Health Internship Program. She is now serving as a community preceptor to our current BTG students. She's the medical director of the Philadelphia Delaware Valley chapter of the Sickle Cell Disease Association, and she also serves as the outreach liaison for the comprehensive sickle cell team at Children's Hospital. Marjorie's passion and drive to learn a skill set that could be used in the service of others was evident when she participated in Bridging the Gaps almost 25 years ago, and this drive has continued to this day. Ironically, I did the math last night, and I think she and I were both somewhat shocked that it was 25 years ago. She's now a leader in her field who is constantly looking for ways to address the health and social needs of her constituents. And by doing so, she enriches the lives of those she serves and those she mentors. Therefore, we asked Marjorie to say a few words today. However, just to provide a program disclaimer here, Bridging the Gaps does not pretend to take credit for the commitment and dedication that our students bring to the experience. Nor can we take credit for the expertise offered by our partnering community organizations and the people they serve. However, at a time in our country's history when the human need that surrounds us is staggering, it's our hope that we continue to foster a collaborative infrastructure of multiple constituencies. And we hope that this collaborative effort can support the delivery of critical services in the here and now, while also creating a skilled, interprofessional workforce that understands the role social justice will play in fully meeting the needs for those services in the future. Marjorie?
Good morning, everybody. Still morning, right? It's been a journey. I know exactly where you guys started, and I know exactly where you're sitting right now, and at the end of this program, kind of bringing it full circle, and then on your perspective pathways. This program opened my eyes to the possibilities of what a traditional physician could do in today's world. I mean, we learn it in a very particular way. We envision it in a very particular track. But then being exposed to the community and learning what they needed from their perspective and how my role could be expanded on multiple levels really changed my formula from being linear to exponential. It really was explosive because I then began imagining my career in a very different way from what it started out to be. So where I felt like I needed to be in the hospital 24/7 and wear that white coat, I began to understand that those hours spent without the white coat, but still having the physician hat on, may be the most impactful hours of my day and in my career. I began to envision my career on multiple levels, and that it didn't have to be one role, it could be multiple. So now I serve 3 roles, and they all serve me on a very different level. I wake up every morning at 4:30 loving what I do. I get to use my medicine, I get to use the human factor, and I learned that human factor primarily through this program. Merging it with the skill set that they taught me, I then pursued other things. The program allowed me to kind of get this vision. I can make my career whatever it needed to be in order to change the lives or positively impact the lives of those individuals that I was touching. And I love this program because there was never a limit. It's like, if you think of it, then just do it. Run with it. We'll make it possible. I mean, it might sound crazy at the beginning, but let's just see where it goes. And it's definitely shaped me as an individual to the point that my desire to be a preceptor was without a doubt primary, so that when Lucy came knocking on the door, I was like, sure, of course. And now I feel like I'm in this network of individuals that, in redefining healthcare as we know it, and that's broad, it's holistic care for the person, the individual, which becomes then our country, our nation. Each of us will be doing it in a very precise way with our skill set and our experiences. And then it makes us individuals and bring nuances to the table. So every time I host a different set of students, I learn something new. They reimagine what I do differently. And every time I'm at the table at a meeting or with a patient in clinics or at a conference or teaching a class, I'm able to fuse all the skills that I have, bring it to the table, and always have that human factor. Because I think at the end of the day, on a social, ethical level, or on a medical level, on a health level, the human factor is what remains the most important thing. And I just came from a conference where I kept saying BTGs over and over and over again. Then they kept telling me, what does that mean again? I'm like, well, if you don't know BTGs, you need to get to know it. But I think you guys have had, and hopefully, an amazing experience. And as you continue in your prospective fields, you'll realize how much it's impacted you over and over, and the networks and connections you make in this room will serve you in the future and levels that you don't even realize right now. So don't lose touch, try not to. And make that effort to make the extra connections, because it will just amplify what you can do and your reach in society, in the community, in the health field, as a social worker, as a dental student, because it all comes back. For the community, it all realigns. It's just about figuring out for that individual or in that environment at the time that you're in, what is that hook? Where is it that they need you the most? And then applying it in the way in which they get it. And I really feel like this program helped me think of it in multiple dimensions, so that I could always figure out, no matter where I was, how to deliver what I was able to offer in the best way that would serve the person that I was offering it to. So tell everybody to join this program, and tell everybody else to fund this program, because we just need to triple the size of this room for next couple of years. Thank you so much for participating.
I love that you gave a plug to the funders. Thank you. Anyway, thank you, Marjorie. So each year at the Philadelphia Symposium, Bridging the Gaps gives an award to a person who represents the ideals of the program. The Bridging the Gaps Award is given for promoting social dialogue and constructive interaction in an increasingly diverse world, for spanning cultures and class to build collaboration and consensus, and for encouraging and understanding through public service and civic involvement. As we were thinking about who might be an appropriate Bridging the Gaps awardee for our 27th program year, the world around us was engulfed by edicts and frightening language that impacted a central and diverse population in our country, immigrants. As Bridging the Gaps is a program committed to the health and well-being of vulnerable and often disenfranchised populations, we felt it was very important that our awardee and our award go to someone who provides a voice for this honored segment of our population. Eddie Zhang was born in China and immigrated to the US in 1982 at the age of 12. His journey in this country was complex. With two parents working day and night to survive in a new country, coupled with the challenges of being an adolescent in an unfamiliar country, Eddie joined a peer group whose activities ultimately landed him in prison. As is so often the case, Eddie's parents did not know enough about the system, nor did they have the resources to hire someone to find the appropriate advocacy for their son. At age 16, Eddie was sentenced to 7 years to life. To truly understand Eddie's journey, our students watched a documentary called Breathin' about Eddie's life and struggle from prison to fighting deportation to citizenship and ultimately to using his experience and firsthand knowledge to build a career of advocacy and caring for vulnerable people. There's so much in Eddie's story that is relevant to Bridging the Gaps and the people we serve, and this is beautifully illustrated by the following quote from Eddie, and I quote, "What people don't realize sometimes is when people, whether voluntarily or forcefully, migrate to another country, there's a lot of trauma they have to deal with, like displacement and acculturation. We have to understand that dynamic and provide equitable resources so they have the opportunity to discover their potential as human beings," end quote. To take this comment a step further, we need to provide equitable resources for all people in our country, including those who are vulnerable and disenfranchised, but how we do this is the challenge. As one of our 2017 BTG medical students wrote in her final paper, quote, "If we are on a path as medical professionals towards accumulating more privilege, we need to get smart about sharing it with others. People with privilege have easier access to spaces that people without privilege don't. Think about the spaces you can access and if they can be of use for the movement. Remember that learning to use this access and these spaces for humane work is also essential for us to be able to pursue our chosen paths without losing ourselves. There is no charity. All of our liberation is tied up in each other, and none of us can be free while some of us are sick," end quote. From my interactions with Eddie during these past months, it's clear that Eddie now sees himself as, quote, "a person of privilege," using our students' language. He knows he has access, and he knows only too well that all of our freedoms are tied up in each other. He knows what he did to land him in prison at the age of 16 was wrong. However, as he noted in his bio, he's using his experience to inspire and motivate young people to invest in their education, to raise awareness about the detrimental impact that the prison industrial complex has on the Asian and Pacific Islander population, and finally to promote racial harmony among people of color. A tall order, I might add. In sum, in honoring Eddie Zhang, we honor his commitment to leverage his past to offer opportunity and to create a future for those he serves. At the same time, in honoring Eddie Zhang, we also honor our community partners who persevere using all of the resources at their disposal to advocate and care for the health and well-being of the most vulnerable among us. In a world where their work is not always recognized, either philosophically or financially, They, like Eddie, are driven by the clear knowledge that what they do is pivotal to the survival of the communities they serve. And finally, in honoring Eddie Zhang, we also honor the current and future health and social service professionals who participate in Bridging the Gaps, often because they understand their privilege and the fact that with privilege comes responsibility. We hope our students will, like Eddie, combine humility, knowledge, and strength in the service of those without a voice, while discovering the personal fulfillment that results from advocacy and action. We also hope that in doing so, like Eddie, they will promote the well-being, safety, quality of life, and opportunity for those they serve. On behalf of the Bridging the Gaps Network, we honor Eddie Zhang for a life of courage and commitment to gaining access for those who follow. And as I welcome Eddie to the podium, I will use a salutation that he uses at the beginning or end of his interaction with others. That salutation is Happy New Breath. So happy new breath, Eddie.
Well, happy new breath, everyone. Before I start, I just want to invite all of you to just sit up straight and just be comfortable, and let's all take a deep breath together. Let's take another one. The breath that we all just inhale sustains our life. But yet, too often that we take that breath for granted because we expect that breath to come. Because that is the survival breath that we all needed. But we're always forgetting how do we make sure to be mindful of our breath and how important that is for each and every one of us. So we can make that breath a thrivable breath instead of just a survival breath. Right? So my name is Eddie, and what an honor to be a recipient for the Bridging the Gaps Award. And my pronoun is he, him, and his, and it's something that I also want to be able to embrace as someone who is trying to learn about all the intersectionalities that we all have to deal with in our world. So for me, it's important to talk about my journey to be where I'm at today in this space right here. And that journey came with a lot of good intentions, and then it also came with a lot of bad results. But ultimately, it's still a process of learning and growing for me. For many of you who watched the documentary Breathing the Eddie Zhang story, that is just a story that I was able to uplift because of my access. Because each and every one of you has a documentary of your own. So when I received this award, I'm grateful, but at the same time, I want to receive this award on behalf of my colleagues at the Asian Prisoner Support Committee, as well as all the people who are incarcerated, who don't have a voice, especially the group of people that we work with in San Quentin State Prison, where we established a program called ROOTS, which is an acronym for Restoring Our Original True Selves. So I want to accept this award on behalf of them, because they are trying to do what they can every day to bridge that gap from freedom to isolation. So to talk about my journey, I want to talk about the journey of many other immigrants. And the association has to do with the acronym of MSPDP. MSPDP. So we hear all this in medical profession, ADHD, all these different terms that we categorize as young people or adults. So the M stands for migration, and the S is school, P is for prison, the D for deportation, and the P for pipeline. So I want to share a little bit about the migration to school to prison and deportation pipeline, because that's not something that we frequently hear about or talked about. Whether it's voluntary migration or forced migration, people experience a certain level of trauma when they move away from their country to another country. As immigrants come to a country, we are immediately faced with 3 different barriers. One is the language barrier, and then we have the cultural differences, and then we have the generation gap. So with those type of challenges, it's very difficult for immigrants to assimilate to a new country, a new culture. But when we talk about voluntary migration or forced migration, that's always a push and pull that created that dynamic. So for me, because my grandparents were here in the United States for 40, 50 years, and they had established themselves here, that they thought when they came back to China to visit us in 1980, that they felt that it's important for our family to come to the United States because it will provide us with a better educational opportunity and career opportunity. So I didn't have a choice as a 10-year-old to decide whether I want to come to the United States or not, because that decision was made for me with very good intentions. But when I came here, it's the barriers that I had never anticipated coming to this country. So because of the circumstances of my upbringing, which is someone who was spoiled in China, who would have everything was given to me and provided for me, then all of a sudden became poor in the new country and having to start all over, I wasn't able to adjust that as a 12-year-old. So during that process, I made a series of poor decisions when I entered the school system, which there was no culturally competent program for someone who is an immigrant like myself. So I remember that I went to my school the first day. My dad took me there, which to this day I'm very proud of my dad, because he didn't speak any English, but he was able to take me to school and drop me off in the school for my first day. And he had to look for someone who spoke Cantonese to guide me and took me to my homeroom. And when I went there, I saw a group of students in the classroom, and I saw these 2 teenage girls, which I thought were adults. I went to them and I gave them my homeroom slip, and they laughed at me. And I'm like, why were they laughing at me? I was a new student. So they waited, and then the teacher came in, and they gave the homeroom slip to the teacher. Well, I mistakenly thought that they were teachers because they looked more mature, they looked older. But they were 12-year-olds, right? Because I wasn't used to seeing that when I was growing up in China at the time. If you look at back in the 80s in China, it's totally different than what's going on in China today. So you have the girls there, at that time, they don't wear makeups, they don't wear a lot of jewelry, or they don't dress differently. So I thought they were different. I thought they were adults, like young adults. So that's the perception. And I remember also when I was in English class, and I was asked in front of the class to stand up in front of the class to answer this question: what is faster, the bike, the car, the train, or the plane? I didn't know how to answer that question. And then, so my classmates laughed at me. I just stood there feeling like, man, why am I here? Why people are laughing at me? So I had to stay after class And I just remember the teacher asked me to do a translator and with the picture say, well, how come you didn't understand how to answer the question? Like, do you know what is faster? So, of course I knew what was faster. The plane was fastest, right? But I couldn't understand what she was asking. So I couldn't answer her question. So for me, it's pretty traumatizing, which I wasn't aware of. That's what that was called trauma. So through those type of experiences, I couldn't fit in. And it was very easy for me to gravitate towards the people who were in the same situation as I was as new immigrants. So we skipped school. Of course, from a nurturing environment that I was growing up in China, all of a sudden coming to a country where my parents had to work and I don't get to see them, I ended up having to fend for myself most of the time during the day. And with a series of those type of experiences that led me to being chronic truant, being dropped and kicked out of school, and then that led me to my life crime, which is kidnap, commit robbery, with two of my co-defendants. And then I was charged as an adult and sentenced to life in prison. So from the migration to the school, I ended up in the prison, in the criminal justice system. And what I didn't know was also that because I'm not a citizen of the United States, after I finished serving my time, that I'm automatically detained or deported from this country. So that's just there's some of the impacts on this pipeline. But I want to talk a little bit about the forced migration, where the United States were able to utilizing other countries as battlegrounds, right, for their proxy wars, to uphold the agenda of imperialism and capitalism, right? So many of the people that we provide services to, and I have spent time with inside the prison system, were people who are traumatized by war, where prior to they come to this country, because of the war, their resources were depleted. Their homeland was bombed, and carpet bombed. And they left with, besides the chemical residuals that left in their country, but they left the human destruction, especially when it comes to talk about trauma. So from the trauma of war, they came to the United States as refugees. But they don't come directly to the United States to get settled down. They are often being put in refugee camps to be able to get vetted before they can place them in different families who is willing to sponsor them or host them, or locations they can host them. So what ended up happening is that there is no culturally competent therapeutic program for those people who have been traumatized by war. So when they came here, they have to deal with the same barriers that I have to deal with as someone who voluntarily come to the United States. So now once they get placed in the United States, they didn't get placed into an affluent and nurturing environment. So frequently, they're being placed in poverty and violence-stricken areas alongside with the people of color. So there's another layer of trauma that they have to deal with in survival. So as they traversed through this migration to the school, many of them also fell into the criminal justice system. And then as they finished doing their time in prison, what was waiting for them is deportation to their country. And sometimes it's to their country that they've never been in, because many of the children were born in refugee camps and not necessarily from their own motherland. So this is a challenge because in the United States, when we talk about mass incarceration, people are always just thinking about crime and punishment. But people don't really think about mass incarceration as a public health issue. The mass incarceration is something that impacts in every one of us as we live, no matter what part of the world that we live in. So for us, when we're talking about the Asian American and Pacific Islander population who are incarcerated, we often talk about a very small percentage of people in comparison of the people of color majority who are in the prison industry complex. So what that is called is, unfortunately, it's called tyranny in small numbers. Just because we don't have a big population doesn't mean that we don't need resources. Doesn't mean that we don't need support. Doesn't mean that we don't need rehabilitation programs. So in that sense, that's why I want to reach back inside to the prison system to be able to help the individual who are in there, to give them the opportunity to have access to culturally competent programs. So I didn't go into a lot of details of this, because I'm assuming that you watched the documentary, so I don't want to keep talking about some of the stuff, but I do want to say that education played a very integral part in being who I am today. And without education, I wouldn't have been in this space right here. Right? That's one important thing. The other important thing is my family support. Even though my family felt ashamed that when I was incarcerated, I brought shame to the family. They couldn't lift their heads up high. They never stopped supporting me, especially my parents. They were always there for me. And the third thing is community. When I was able to create an access to the community responded in supporting me. So because of their support, because of their validation of my transformation, I'm able to be in the space I am today. So having said that, I want to say, I want to share with you about the program that we have inside the San Quentin State Prison and also Solano State Prison. In the history of California's incarceration, in the prison system, there's never been a culturally specific program that specifically catered to the Asian American and Pacific Islander populations. And that's what led me to solitary confinement with my friends who signed a proposal to advocate for ethnic studies and asking the administrations to honor our rights and follow the law. So as a result of us pushing for more diverse curriculums in the prison college program, then we were put in solitary confinement. And the reason I was pushing so hard for it because it saved me. Because I was able to access curriculums and books that learn about people's history and culture. So I learned more about other people's history and culture before I learned about mine. Because the people inside, many of the educators who were inside, even who are doing time, were able to inspire me to read some of the material as well as many of the people on the outside. And so when I was able to really learn about other people's culture and history, I was able to really find the commonality of those experiences in my culture. And that was what created the opportunity for me to find my identity, to take responsibility for my actions, and to be able to make that process of transformation, right? So when I got back out to the community, I want to go back in to say that, you know what, I need to go back in to help the people who are still inside. And we try to engage the administration to start a program in there, but if you're not a religious program, you're not going to be able to go in there just to start a program. Because whatever program they have in existence, then that's what they have. But if it's any type of religious program, it's a constitutional right that you have to be in there. So I was able to try to engage the administration. They say, nah, we can't have that. So my friends and I, we even thought about figured out a religion that they didn't have and trying to go in there with religion. And what we found out was they didn't have shaman. So we said, okay, so we Google shaman and trying to figure out how that religion worked. And then we're trying to go in there to make that proposal and say, oh, we're bringing this religion here for many of the Southeast Asian populations in there. And it didn't work out. It didn't work out, and we didn't get approved. But then so that was in Solano prison. We're trying to go in there. But then I went back to San Quentin State Prison. We were able to be very fortunate to have one of the allies, this woman who actually was in a different program called the Trust, and she was able to invite us to the program to go in to really talk to people inside who are doing that program, and then we're trying to seek their interest if they want to be in that create a program that's specifically to address API challenges. And through 2 years or 3 years of consistent going in and building relationships, we were finally able to start our program. And the model that we went in is not a top-down model. We went in there with the youth development framework where we want to be the people who are inside are driving the program and curriculum, because we want them to take ownership of that program, right? Just like when you go into, many of you that in Bridging the Gaps, when you went into this program in different sites, it's the first thing, the challenge is how do you build trust and relationship with people that don't normally associate with you and your lifestyle and your privileges sometimes, right? So we use this framework, of forming, storming, norming, and performing. Right? So we went in there, we identified the people who are interested, really getting them to come together to talk about this idea of creating a curriculum that caters to them and their needs. So instead of us going in there saying, this is what you need to be successful and this is how you need to get out of prison, we went in there with the ideas like, what are your needs and how can we support you without access and privileges on the outside? So once we start that process, of course, there's some different ideas that come up, and so that's where the storm comes in, right? Because it's a pilot program, so sometimes we have to work out the kinks. But once we were able to work out the kinks, then it's become a norm, right? But once we normalize the program where people are in there and taking the leadership role, then they're actually performing and excelling. So this is our 4 years inside San Quentin Prison with the Roots program, and the people inside are actually facilitating all the workshops, right? So, as I mentioned earlier, Roots stands for restoring our original true selves, because the guys in there, they know the importance of their discovering their authentic selves, because they know that the person who committed a crime, they're not that person, right? That's not who they were born to be, but it's decisions that they make as a result of different circumstances that put them in that situation, right? So we were using this ethnic studies model, and that's the model that I also use when I'm dealing with the multicultural youth leadership program, in San Francisco, is we talk about chi. And the chi that I'm talking about is not just about aligning with our energy and our breath and how do we sustain ourselves, but the chi that I'm talking about is culture, history, and identity. Because as many of the guys in there say, and we always hear this, we say, if you don't know your history, then you don't know yourself. And when you do know your history, then you will know yourself, right? No history, no self. No history, no self. So this chi is very important for them because they never had the opportunity to really understand their culture and their history and all the trauma that their parents and they themselves has experienced. So we use the ethnic studies model and utilizing culture and history as a way to heal intergenerational trauma. So what they were able to do is really put the trauma in a historical context, right? Instead of just saying that, oh, this is personal only, and this is why I did this and how we do this, but we put that in a historical context to tie with the personal. And then what we're able to do is create cultural responsive approach to address this trauma, which is giving them nurturing space to uplift their personal narrative. So when they were able to do that, that's where they find that they're able to reclaim their personal narratives to unlock that forbidden trauma that they never were aware of because they would never have that opportunity. And what that led to was empowerment, leadership, and social engagement. So that's the way that we're trying to approach this, and that's the way that they were able to engage in this process, right? Where they're able to now having conversations with their parents to address the trauma that they had experienced for each other. Because many of them, either they blame their parents for what had happened, or they blame themselves, or they blame society, or they blame different systems, but not understanding the historical context of where that origin of trauma came from, right? So that was important. So through that practice, I feel that that's something that we should practice in what we call the free world, right, which is out here. You know, when people who are locked up inside, we always say, well, one day I want to be out in the free world. So out in the free world sometimes is not as happy as people thought people are in the free world. Because for me, education allowed me the opportunity to become mentally free before I was physically free. Yet, I was very aware of the fact that when I was inside, there are many people who are mentally incarcerated, even though they're physically out, right? So I want to just focus on a little bit about how important bridging the gaps have been, even for the short time that I understand, you know, what bridging the gap represents. What I found the commonality is that that's what I've been doing all my life, is trying to bridge the gaps. How do I bridge the gaps to be accepted by my peers, by my parents, by my environment? How do I bridge the gaps with my own people? How do I bridge the gaps between other people's culture and color and history? So bridging the gaps create the opportunity for healers. This is who you are, all of you are. You are healers. And bridging the gaps, the experience that you are able to encounter give you opportunity to have what we were discussing last night about this alternative way of thinking, right? And if many of you read Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed, you know, he talks about the banking education versus the critical education. And being a part of, in the healthcare field or in the social service field, is about critical thinking. It's not just about the skill set that you have and you learn to be able to help people, but it's how do you heal people. And in order for you to heal people, you have to heal yourself. Because we're never separated from the self, family, and community. So as we embark on this journey, especially for the next generation of healers, you have to hold that space where you have to learn how to heal yourself. I asked one of my good friends who is a nurse in Oakland Children's Hospital, and she's been there for about 15 years working there. And one of the things that she shared with me was that you have to have ecology days, which is mental health days, right? You have to have mental health days because if you don't know how to take care of yourself, how are you going to take care of other people who need more of you, who are demanding more of you? How do you do that? And the other thing that she shared with me was that if you're in this type of field, you have peers in this field. So it may be a good thing to join a union, right? And when you join a union, you must be active in a union to be able to create opportunities to share what your needs are and what you think could be better serve the people, right? And then another challenge, this is from my experience working in violence prevention, working with young people and also with crime victims and adults, is that, often we are very quick to call law enforcement or the police to address some of the issues or some of the disputes. And I personally experienced in 3 different cases where police was being called to a place where there's a dispute, a family dispute, and then the person ended up being killed, right, by the police because their short-sightedness or the lack of culturally competent engagement with people who have mental health challenges. So if there's a way as healers, whether it's in your hospitals or whether it's in different spaces that you're in social space that you're in, if you can avoid calling the police or if you can come up with different alternatives to address those type of conflicts, that would be something that we should work towards. Just like what's happening in Oakland, California with the critical resistance program, they have this Oakland power projects where they actually create opportunities for health professionals to be able to use alternatives instead of calling 911, right? Let's retrain ourselves to not using the first response, to use 911 as the first response and find alternatives. And we should make all spaces like the Salvation Army Center right here, as well as hospitals and different spaces, sanctuaries, especially for immigrant populations, right? So those are the space that we need to be in. And I know we're running short of time because I can talk for hours. But I do want to say this though, is that many of us, we have a lot of privileges, right? It doesn't matter. We have a lot of privileges in our own, just as an individual, right? We have a lot of privileges. And, but one thing in common is that, we all want love. We all want people to love us. We want to love people. We want to be financially stable. We want to have a nurturing environment. And we want to be happy in general, right? We want to have all of that. But we can't forget, just like when I like to use this analogy, is that just like when you're doctors and when you're dentists or when you're a social worker, when you're talking to your patients, you want to talk, not only do you want to just take care of what is the immediate need, but you're trying to address the root cause of that, the symptom, right? Why do you have a cold, or why do you have this trauma, and how do we address to heal that? Because if we only address the surface, creating Band-Aid solutions, then and not addressing the root cause, then your patient is going to keep coming back, and who's going to benefit from that? The pharmaceutical company is going to be benefited, making that money, right? So it's all about profit, right? How do we profit? But human beings, you can put a value on human being, right? So when we look at, as healers, when you look at this, I want to look at this from the perspective of, where we at in this country, right? So how do we have the social responsibility to be civilly engaged, to make sure that people who don't necessarily have the privilege, as some of us do, to be free from oppression, to be free from pollution, to be free from discrimination, to be free from hate. How do we do that, right? And yes, some of us have very strong feelings about people who don't believe in the values that you may personally have. But where do we draw that line? How do we bridge that gap, right? So for me, we have to focus on love. How do we focus on love? How do we love? To focus on love is about how do we share power, right? How do we share the power that we have with each other? How do we do that? And how do we show up for each other when we're talking about love? How do we do that? And not just utilize what the dominant narrative has been, the good immigrants versus the bad immigrants, the deserving and the undeserving. When I was walking in the poster board today, just talking to some of the healers, everybody said that when they come in the door, we don't really look at them trying to discriminate them. They're just someone who's in their program, whether you're a senior, when you're a young person, you come in. But people who are impacted by poverty, impacted by violence, impacted by trauma, they came in with so much prejudgment and a preconceived notion of how people judge them. You don't even have to judge them because they'll be the most critical person of themselves. So how are we as healers to be able to open that arm and open that mind to say that in order for me to embrace you when I sign up to become a healer for the rest of my life, how do I embrace you as a human being and not what circumstances that brought you there, right? So how do we address the root cause of mass incarceration, the root cause of discrimination, the root cause of violence, the root cause of poverty? And that's something that we have to talk about, which is the systemic racism that still drives this country. So we are all beneficiaries. We are all beneficiaries of people who came before us, who sacrificed for us. Each and every one of our parents, grandparents, or great-grandparents, they want us to have a better lives than the one that they had. So they make many sacrifices. Many of the indigenous people of this land, that when their land was taken away, when their whole livelihood is being taken away, well, they sacrificed so we can have this space right here to even be in this land, right? So we are not just immigrants, and we're not just United States citizens. We are citizens of this earth that we all share. So how do we take care of each other? How do we take care of the earth that's sustaining us? How do we do that? And what are you willing to sacrifice for your children and your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren? What are you willing to do that? So I'll just finish with a couple of things. One thing is that I don't want to be glorified by anybody or put on a pedestal because of what I do. When I discover myself and my potentials after I become educated and socially conscious and politically conscious, I knew that I'm going to utilize the rest of my life to pay forward, to be able to do things that I can help other people, right? I cannot change the past, but I can do something positive and pay forward. But I never forget the trauma that I inflicted on my victims and on my family and on my community. So taking responsibility is something that I always hold close to my heart, because I know every time that I walk out there, I could be triggering people. I had my experience of being a formerly incarcerated individual has been a little better than many other people, I would say, because the community really embraced my transformation, and then I had the opportunity to be able to make a difference. So I would say I get a lot of accolades and people, validate my transformation, and I appreciate that. But just this past month, I received some not so good emails because I'm a public person, so anybody can have my email and send me messages. And this person really spoke out for one of my direct victims, right? Because he said that, I don't want to repeat what he said because it's very, it's not even, it's definitely not PG. I say it's more than R-rated, right? So it's pretty much this person say that, oh, you victimized this individual. Pretty much he should say, you're a scum, you're this. So I don't appreciate it, but I understand the anger and that rage. But what really caused me to pause and think deep and really bothered me was that this individual was wishing all the bad things to my mom and to my wife. So he pretty much saying that, because you did this, your mom, your wife should be getting all this, and this bad things happen to your wife. So for me, it's like, how traumatized is this individual? Where he's able to, one way he's advocating for the victim, trying to just stand up because he's angry that I committed this crime when I was 16, 30-some years ago. And not see me as an individual today, but saw me as the 16-year-old. But at the same time, all the things that he said is about victimized women. So how does that make sense? So for me, I immediately really, anytime people, I talk about my crime and everyone, I do this, I always feel ashamed, right? I just couldn't understand, how did I do that? How did that happen? Well, of course, I knew how it happened, but I just still always think about it. Why did that happen? I wouldn't do any of that stuff today, right? But what is important is there are many individuals like this guy right here who wrote those type of email to have those type of mentalities. We need healing for those people. It's one thing that I'm being recognized as a formerly incarcerated individual who committed those crimes. It's another thing that the many people who are living with trauma, living with no alternative way to heal their trauma, and they're walking around among us. So we can look at so-and-so as they're criminal, they're bad immigrants, those people don't deserve to be in this country, and then trying to figure out who are the people who are actually causing trauma on a systemic level, who's holding those people accountable. Right? That's the important. So I always say this, on a happy note, I always say that we must be willing to engage on a personal revolution before we're able to embark on a collective revolution. And there's no time to do that than the present. Within the current state of the administration and what's going on around this country right now, we really have to be vulnerable. We have to be vulnerable and be honest with ourselves and to have that personal revolution. Where do you stand? What are you willing to acknowledge? What are you willing to sacrifice? What are we willing to build so we can have a better environment so we can have a better society. So as you embark on your healing journey, I want you to remember that you are beautiful, that you are important, that your lives are miracles, and we are never separated from ourselves, our families, and our community. Let's keep bridging the gaps. Thank you.
Is he incredible or what? He is showing us what human potential is and what transformation is. And if you would trust me just for 60 seconds, I would ask everyone to stand. Oh, Najee Mueed. I would ask everyone to stand up. Trust me for 60 seconds. And give yourself that permission to heal and say, I am healing. 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 But we're not selfish people. Now turn to your neighbor and say, you are healing. Bring in the crickets. Say, you are healing. 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 But we want to heal together, like he said. Now I want you to honor the earth. Think of the buffalo, 6 million buffaloes that was terminated, that was murdered, so they could conquer the Lakota people. So now I want you to open up your hearts, connect with Mother Earth, connect with the buffalo, and do the buffalo dance and say, we are healing. 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 And there's nothing happens without spirit. Take a deep breath in. Our world is healing. Take a deep breath in. Our world is healing. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I just want you to know that I have never met this gentleman. So I have to say that, Eddie, you have just brought a magnetism. I would love to know your name.
Well, I mean, that's love, right? That's about sharing space and sharing power.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
It's awesome. Okay.
Now, if I was President so-and-so up here, the bodyguards would be like, hey, you cannot come here and do this. But we are community, so we all good.
So does anyone else want to come up? All right. I just want to say thank you. This gentleman is an extraordinary person, and we had the opportunity last night to just spend some time with him in a very quiet space, and it was really inspirational. So to all of you, I just want to say that these students are also inspirational. They are our future. You are our future leaders. We hope you will take whatever you took from this program to heart. We're looking forward to you taking good care of our community and of our world. We adore you, and if you need any of our help, we are here. And I want to thank Eddie. I want to thank Marjorie. I want to thank all of you, because we are a community. And I need to find out this gentleman's name, but thank you. Okay. So I have one more thing to say to the students, getting back to logistics. Can you go back to your tables, take down your posters, and finish the paperwork for this program? Thank you very much.